Unhinged Addiction and what alcohol addiction was like for me. I'm your host, Eric Zink, and I just share from my experience. And something I get asked a lot about is when it comes to alcohol addiction, what was it really like? How did you know you became an alcoholic? And at what point do you become an addict? And so I share a lot from my personal experience. I'm actually at our new studio downtown Boise. My wife and I now have an area actually to do work on social media at, which I'm very, very excited about and very grateful for. If you're new to the Unhinged Addiction, make sure you hit the follow and subscribe button here on Spotify or whatever you're listening on. And if you do still follow me on social media, it is the Mr. Impulsive on TikTok, Instagram, Eric Zink on Facebook, Eric B. Zink on YouTube. And getting into what it was like with alcohol addiction. So I started drinking at like 14, and it was like I wanted to fit in. I was medicated at this time. I was already diagnosed ADD. Later on, I was re-diagnosed ADHD, and no one really talked or knew what, like that much, at least in Michigan where I lived, what ADD was. All I knew is I had to take like this Ritalin medication, and kind of made me feel a little bit different. But eventually I kind of wanted to fit in with people. And in high school, I mean, people talk about peer pressure all the time and you know, oh, somebody around some dark corner is going to offer you stuff. And that's not how peer pressure is at all. I mean, peer pressure comes into you wanting to fit in, or you seeing people going out and doing something and they're all having fun and like a story and like this weird bond, and you want to kind of fit in. I mean, that's what peer pressure I think really is. And that's what caught my attention with alcohol was I wanted that. I wanted some of these fun stories. I wanted some of this connection with some of these people. I wanted to fit in. And so I thought alcohol was really kind of the way for me to go of like, hey, you know, everybody else is drinking, why can't I? And the first time I started really drinking, like I didn't like how it tasted. I wasn't a beer person, but I did like how it made me feel. I liked that it relaxed me. It was fun. You know, you made these memories of, you know, having a couple beers in a construction site where they're building houses and not doing any like damage to anything. Just like the next day at school though, you'd have like this connection with people, and you'd be like, God, you know, last night was so much fun. What are we going to do this weekend? And you kind of just built friends through alcohol. At least I did. And so it became just kind of a normal part of like social connection, unfortunately. And that's the way that I really looked at it. I looked at it as social connection. I looked at it as fun. And, you know, I couldn't control my drinking. There was times I would pass out. I remember like visuals of like being like friends like jumping on top of me because I'd like passed out. And we were supposed to go do something, whatever, later at night. And I just would go right back to sleep. I couldn't control the drinking very well. But I would drink, you know, through high school. I remember hiding alcohol going into high school, you know, putting it into a cup and going to McDonald's and, you know, throwing a beer in there afterwards, or I would dump in vodka or whatever it was and drinking it in the middle of school. It was kind of this rebellious way to, you know, just be a rebel, I guess, or to push the extremes. And that was part of my problem with drinking, is it was pushing the extremes. I always wanted to, it was like it was never enough. There had to be chaos there. There had to be something else. And that's where drinking really would get out of control then all of a sudden, because I'd push the extremes. And it was very, like it never bit me in the ass. Like it never got in trouble for any of it. And so I looked at it as the norm. And back then, I mean, I could quit drinking and not go through DTs or anything of that sort, but I would drink. And I enjoyed it. And I mean, my parents even had it where they were like, hey, we know you're going to drink, so if you drink at home, you know, don't drive and we'll let you drink here. And so it just really became kind of normalized to me. And again, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how alcohol made me feel. And of course, you're young, so you know, you're not really getting hangovers. You're bouncing back pretty quick. And I ended up moving to Florida when I was 18. Actually, no, I was 19. It was a freshman year at Grand Valley State University. I was failing out, and my soon-to-be future first ex-wife, she lived in Florida, so I moved down to Florida with her. And, you know, down there, she was 21, and so she could buy me alcohol. Her sister could buy me alcohol. I remember they would buy me alcohol, And I would just ask them for alcohol. They'd go to the store and get it. And it was no thing for me to like walk around and have alcohol there, which made it even more normalized. And it got to the point that I would just, every day was a hard day all of a sudden where, I had to have a drink and was working, going to college, in a relationship, and just drinking became part of that. And it made it easier for me to talk. It did take down my walls a lot. And I don't know why it made it easier for me to talk. I guess I wasn't so stuck in my head, so worried about what I would say or worried about what I would do. It just made me feel normal, I guess, in that sense. And so it really, like, I would just drink. And I remember the first time I tried to kind of quit. I wasn't even 21. And that shows you that there's a problem, because here I am, like, trying to want to quit at, like, not even 21, kind of thinking that I have an issue. And I'll never forget, like, my ex-wife, I remember she kissed me and she was like, oh, I kind of miss the taste of beer on your breath. And that was like her way of telling me, like, to start drinking again. So I did. And so I never thought it was a problem. I always thought I had it under control. And when I was drunk, it was like I could think clearer. This ex-wife also didn't really like me taking any of my ADHD meds, and so it kind of slowed me down. I could be more productive on alcohol. When it came to trying to put things together or construction work or anything like that, man, like, alcohol just slowed me down so much. And you don't realize this at the time. You didn't know, no given period of time, because of, I think, how it's marketed and how we look at it. Are we like, wow, this isn't normal. Like, I shouldn't be drinking at noon. I shouldn't be drinking every single night. This just became normal. And the way that it's marketed, this is normal. And then I'm hanging out with other construction workers or whatever, building a Quonset hut, and everybody's drinking, and it was normal. So I was like, all right, like, this is kind of how it is. And when I turned 21, it didn't really have the luster effect. And I think that was really the first sign that I had a drinking problem, is when I turned 21. I think most people turn 21, you're like excited, like, hey, I can go get drunk and go party. And for me, it was just like, oh, I can finally buy this myself. Like, it wasn't like this huge, like, milestone at all. It was like, oh, I can go buy this myself. And I think that was kind of like a warning sign, like, looking back. But again, I've never met an addict, alcohol or anything, that goes, dude, on, September 4th, 2012 is when I became an addict. It's this process where it just slowly invades your life into the point of it's every single day. And even when it's every single day, it's not a problem, because you've normalized it so much at that point. And it was weird, because, like, I was in sales, and as life kind of went on, I realized, like, the more stressed out I was, especially being ADHD and not medicated, if I drank, I could calm down and I could think clearer. So I didn't realize it at the time, but self-medicating through alcohol. We moved from Florida to San Diego, and I remember realizing that, like, we can't pay our bills. I'm not making enough money. She's a full-time student. Like, what am I going to do? At one point, I was working like 3 jobs, just trying to pay our rent. And I remember when it kind of hit, like, I'd get really overwhelmed, really stressed out, and freaking out. Like, I just wanted to scream and freak out. But if I drank, it would, like, slow it all down, and I could kind of think, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and D, and I'll make this work. Which ADHD meds do that for me. Like, that was so self-medicating, but your brain just kind of programs itself of, like, okay, like, this works. And it was amazing. Like, I always felt I was more successful when I drank. I was to a point at one point in RV sales that if I drank the night of shows, like, every night, if I drank a 40 and took a bath, I was going to sell an RV the next day. Like, I had these really weird superstitions that I would create and everything around drinking. And that was kind of my obsession. I think that's the way, like, you subconsciously start planning drinking into your life. And alcohol was just always there. I mean, anytime I was ever broke, and I remember one time before we were divorced, we were really stressed out for money. We bought a house. A lot of bad decisions were made, and they were we financially just weren't where we were trying to be. And I remember, like, I had no money, and I ended up walking down. I had found like $4 worth of quarters. I walked down to the gas station. I bought 2 40s of King Cobra because I would drink for percentages. I wouldn't drink for taste. And I thought everybody did that. Like, I didn't realize it wasn't normal to go and find what had the highest alcohol content for the cheapest price. I didn't realize that wasn't normal. And so I remember buying these 40s and sitting on my patio porch or whatever, just drinking. I'm trying to come up with these different solutions of like, how do I make money happen? And I would find ways to make money happen. Usually it was like selling stuff on eBay or whatever it was. And it was like everything that bad would happen, like we would make it through it. We would pull through it, but it was hard. It was a hard, how do you make this work? And alcohol just seemed to slow it all down. And so I really looked at alcohol more as like a tool of a coping than I did as something like ruining my life. Like I would get drunk and I would get messed up. I'd get wrecked and pass out and do stupid things. But it also, alcohol wasn't this huge like, hey, I'm going to go to parties and just get wrecked. I remember, and I would drink anything. I remember drinking a fifth of Di Serono, which you don't really drink Di Serono to get drunk. I did. I would drink whatever I could to get drunk. And I remember I walked from college area in San Diego all the way downtown. I kept stopping at liquor stores on the way. Finally, I called my ex-wife and I was drunk and whatever. She had to come pick me up. That's when I actually, looking back, was like when I first signs of my anxious attachment style. But alcohol was just part of it, man. And I never wanted to admit that I was alcoholic because I just didn't think that I was. Like, alcoholics to me, like, smoked a bunch of cigarettes, stayed in the house, and just drank and passed out. And that wasn't me. I did a lot of things still. And I was successful at work. Like, that's not an alcoholic. I'm not working like some blue collar job. I'm selling RVs. I'm making good money. I have a house. Like, what more is there? And I ended up, I was working as part owner, part in a manager and all this Action RV. There's a little RV dealership around for a short period of time in San Diego. And I remember a guy I worked with, a good guy. His name is Dan. And we had like this whole ritual. On the way home, I would stop, get a King Cobra, 2 King Cobras, and a shooter. Every night, man. Just like clockwork, every night, man. On the way home from work, and I'd see him there and we'd laugh. But to me, it was normal. And I find out more and more later on that it wasn't normal. And you're so inebriated and just drinking constantly, you don't realize your marriage is turning to crap. You don't realize everything that you're losing, and none of it really matters at that time. And I'll never forget when I got divorced, or the divorce started with my first ex-wife. Her biggest thing was like her ceiling of the deal was I was an alcoholic, and I was like, dude, you're the one that wanted me to drink back when I wanted to quit. Like, whatever. Like, I'm not an alcoholic, but maybe there's something to it. So I started telling people I was alcoholic, started asking for help. It was the first time I went to AA. And I didn't go to AA for myself. I went to AA to fix my marriage because that's what was supposed to happen. Like, I was supposed to then get sober. If I quit drinking, like, my marriage is going to fix it. And like, oh, my life is going to get all better. That's what everybody says in this book. And that didn't happen very quickly at all. It didn't. And even when I did get sober, it didn't happen very quickly. But this was supposed to happen right away. No one said, hey, this can take years. Like, this is a whole process. And I ended up relapsing 90 days into my sobriety. That was the first time I tried to get sober, 23 years old. And I kind of knew I had a problem. But I was like, man, I'm 23. I'm probably not going to live till 30. Like, I don't care. And that's part of the thing with addiction is you have a whole part of you that's I don't care. And you can't force an addict to care. Like, I didn't hit rock bottom there. Like, I didn't hit a point that really forced me to look in and say, you know, I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict. I'm looking at like the victim mentality and poor me and my wife is leaving me and it gives me a reason to drink more. And this is when I found really that I loved cocaine. And again, even then, like, I was not an alcoholic, even though I was drinking all the time and just depressed, but it was like a break from it all. And it just constantly through life, like all these little signs of like alcoholism would pop up. I would drink, I would tell myself at nights, I'm only going to have one drink. So I'd get a Dixie cup out and I would fill it to those top like 3 lines, that bottom of the top 3. I mean, that's a lot. I put in some ice and I fill it up with Bacardi Silver. and then I'd top it off with Diet Coke, and I would just keep filling it up with Diet Coke as the night went on. And I just remembered myself like, I'm drinking like a half a fifth every night alone off of that. And that only could last for so long until I think alcohol's the gateway drug. People are like, oh, weed's the gateway. Weed ain't the gateway drug, man. You get a couple drinks in me and I'm making the worst decisions ever. I'll do whatever drug you put out there. You give me weed, I'm not going to try anything else. I want to go to sleep and my anxiety's through the roof and I hate how I feel. But alcohol, man, dude, it's on. Let's do it. And that was one of the other things is like, I think people with ADHD don't also realize it because alcohol makes you feel different with ADHD. It produces dopamine. Like alcohol is geared to get somebody that's ADHD hooked. It's engineered for that. I'm sorry, man. Because if you're not medicated and you are ADHD, you seriously, you drink, and like with most people, like it starts to take the edge off. And with me, it wasn't taking any edge off, man. With me, it's getting the party started. Like I'm feeling good all of a sudden, that dopamine rush. Like, let's do this. Let's go, bro. And now it's on. And I think that's why I went after liquor a lot more than I did, beer or anything like that. I was a liquor drinker. I drank a lot of vodka, a lot of tequila. And I just couldn't stop. Like I loved how it made me feel. And there's always this window. It was a window for like an hour and a half where I would like feel so normal, so slowed down. Like I felt great if I could have kept that feeling going. But a part of my brain, like you can't control your impulse. So I would just keep drinking because I'm like, my brain keeps telling me if I keep drinking, I'm going to keep feeling this way. Not that I'm going to get drunker, but that this feeling will always be there. And of course I would get drunker and pass out, do stupid things. And it was amazing when I would get back on my ADHD meds how I wouldn't quite crave alcohol like I would when I was off. It was like I craved that slowed down normalcy. Like I knew both sides of it. And again, nobody ever told me that ADHD people are more susceptible to addiction and alcohol addiction and drug addiction. And I don't know if necessarily they really knew. I mean, this is back in like the early 2000s where there's a lot of knowledge of it out there, but I don't think it was like widespread awareness. And I just thought alcohol was great and it slowed me down. And if you didn't like me how I drank, then you're not going to like me. And it slowly became my personality. And that's the thing is like, you don't realize all this at the time. It's not a light switch that flips. It absorbs into your personality, into your daily routine. And it becomes so normalized by you that you don't realize it over the course of so many days that next thing you know, it's like you're having a shower beer. And hey, it's great. That was one of the hard things for me. Like I would drink shower beers. I loved a shower beer, man. Get ready. And then, I had one beer. Let's have one more so I have a little bit buzz going. And I remember running RV shows and we'd get an 18 pack and drink that thing on the way to the RV show. And there'd be three of us in the car going through an 18 pack, get to the show and we'd be drunk. But like in sales and a lot of the industries out there, that's okay. Like if you have a really good salesman who can sell, that makes you a lot of money, you don't give a crap what he does as long as he shows up to work. And that was kind of how it was for us. Like we made this company a lot of money. They didn't really care. And so that's the other hard part too, is that's where it's kind of also normalized at. And, there are certain industries that kind of feed into that, and that's the worst part. And so I'd constantly be drinking and constantly getting drunk and constantly just not even realizing that I was an alcoholic. And it wasn't until, like, I remember it invading and I started really realizing I had an issue when I was with Brandy. She was my wife who committed suicide. And like, it was a running joke. Like we'd go through a 24 pack a night and we would build like these towers of Bud Light. And like, I really started realizing like, this is kind of funny, but like, hey, after this winter, when I had met her, like, I can't drink like this anymore. Like I'm starting to gain a little bit of weight. At the time I was actually in pretty good shape. Like I would be going to the gym. I'd do two a days at the gym, getting like, just watching what I ate, watching calorie intake, all this stuff, except when it came to alcohol. I just drink massive amount and it kind of offset it where I was in good shape. Probably was some of the best shape I've ever been in. But now all of a sudden I'm in a relationship, I'm not going to the gym anymore and slowly getting just heavier and heavier off of it. And I constantly battled throughout my 20s and into my 30s of constantly trying to quit alcohol. And I'd give it a run for, 30 days or 60 days and I'd relapse. So it's like I knew I was an alcoholic, but by this time, even like you just make fun and you kind of accept it. You just absorb it into your identity. Like, yep, I'm a functioning alcoholic. I made fun of that like from my mid 20s into when I got sober. It was a running joke. Like if people were like, "Hey, do you think you're alcoholic?" I was like, "Absolutely, I am. I'm just a functioning one." And I was proud of it in its weird sense. And that's just shows you how sick we are and how like dependent we are on these substances, and where to somebody who's not an addict, this doesn't make any sense, but to us, this makes sense. And you just kind of absorb all this in. And I remember like working at Giant RV as a sales manager, and here I'm getting like 99 bananas. I remember being so upset. I had a 99 bananas that I remember cracking the top two, and that little ring didn't break, so the lid wouldn't come off. I'm at a salesman's desk with like pliers ripping the lid off because I had to get the alcohol in there. Like if I had alcohol in my hand, it was gone. Like it got to the point that my impulse control was nothing. If alcohol was there, I drank it. If it was in my hand, I drank it. And the only like nothing would have ever woken me up to this, and nothing anyone could have ever said would make me go, "You're right. I'm an alcoholic. I should quit." At that point, there's nothing that wakes somebody up. The only thing that wakes you up is you. And for me, that was seriously getting fired at Dennis Dillon. So I was working at Dennis Dillon. I opened up this RV dealership in Westminster, California. And that's where my drinking really started to take over. I was drinking at work. Brandy ended up committing suicide. I went off the fucking rails, started drinking every single day. I was drinking a case of 99 bananas on the way to work, and I was drinking vodka. And after work, we'd go to On the Rocks, and I'd go get drunk over there and get my salesman drunk with me. I was just drinking to numb my pain. And I ended up leaving there. I take this job over in Colton as a general manager because I felt like I deserved more. That's the one thing I will say with alcoholics or any addicts. I mean, we make a lot of really poor decisions. It was a poor decision of mine to do that. Ended up taking a pay cut, but I had a title change that was a better title, but a bigger pay cut. So I'm over in working at the RV Man, running that in Colton, and we're doing well. And I started drinking every day to work, and then it was horrible because like I kind of set myself up for failure. I started having my ex-wife's cousin drive with me. She drank a lot, and now I'm drinking on the way to work just every single day. And I mean, we're doing a lot of other things. If you ever heard my stories and what I share. But alcohol was such a massive role in it, and constantly drinking at work and constantly drinking at lunch and always drinking. I ended up quitting there to go back to Dennis Dillon. They had made me a better job offer to go back there. I go back to Dennis Dillon, and I end up getting fired for having an affair with the receptionist. And I remember like leaving, and I got fired. I was drunk. I was high. All I could think about was getting home and getting the alcohol in my system, and I drank. And man, I was just completely hammered for like the next 3 days. Just poor me, victim, me. How could they do that? I couldn't tell I told my wife they fired me for drinking. I couldn't tell her that they fired me for having an affair, and I had a little mutiny against me. And that made it okay, like, hey, I'm an alcoholic, whatever. And I finally she kind of got wind that I was cheating on her. And here I don't really have a job yet. I'm trying to interview for some jobs, and now she's like flipping out that I had maybe this affair. And we get into it one night, and I remember just sobbing in bed, man, going like, this is ridiculous. Like the constant factor of my failure in life was alcohol. Like my life, like alcohol, in one case, I always thought alcohol cured it all and made it all better and made it where it all worked right, and I was successful. But I always did know, and it made me kind of look in and go, I lose control over this. Like I've made a lot of really bad decisions. I'm hurting a lot of people. I have a lot of lies, a lot of guilt. It's exhausting to live a life that just becomes a permanent lie. And that's what I was living. And I remember just like, okay, I have to stop. And I remember I told my ex-wife, I'm like, no, I'm an alcoholic. And I just started calling people and asking for help. What do I do? I'm an alcoholic. And I remember her grandfather had a guy call me and he tell me to go to meetings and all this. And I quit. I quit cold turkey. And I wish I wouldn't have. I mean, I did go into DTs. You know, you throw up, you're shaking, it rocks your whole body and central nervous system. But no one told me that DTs were deadly, and no one told me about any of this. And that was the thing, is like no one ever took the time to say like, hey, how much are you really drinking? Like any of that. But I really wanted this better life. And the worst part was, though, is I bartered with myself. I think any addict out there knows that. Like, we make deals with ourselves. And like that night when I was really messed up, I was like all about getting sober. I'm going to be sober the rest of my life. I'm going to turn my life around. Then the next day when I'm awake, and I'm like, I'll do this for like 6 months and I can relapse. Because, you know, we're addicts. We relapse. This is normal. No one's going to judge me for this. They'll understand. You know, I had the world's biggest crutch that, you know, my wife killed herself. It wasn't until my dad actually ended his life that I like latched onto my sobriety, because I had nothing else. Like I latched onto everything that I had. I wanted to get sober, and it sucked. It was hard, but you don't know who you are, man. You don't know how you got to this point where you look in the mirror and you don't know who you see. I don't know who Eric is. I know who the alcoholic is, but I don't know who Eric is. And it's a scary place to be, man. It's a crappy place to be. And until you're there, you don't get it. And that's the hard part, is trying to explain it to non-addicts. They're like, you know, why don't you just quit? Because you can't. Your brain subconsciously is hardwired for it. Like, you can tell yourself all day long, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. Today I'm quitting. And next thing you know, I'd end up at the liquor store talking to Charles, getting and that was the worst part, is we set ourselves up so much for failure. You had these liquor stores. I would go into certain liquor stores, and without saying a word, everybody there knew, oh, grab a case of 99 bananas. Oh, grab a blue fifth of blue UV. And I would walk in, and I remember even Charles, he'd be like, you want 4 or you want 5, and of shooters, and you go with it, and tomorrow I'll do it. And that's the worst place. Is like, you so subconsciously have normalized this in every aspect of your life, that this is okay. And it's a fight, because you don't know who you are. You've taken every aspect of your life and built it around alcohol. And so to try and go like, hey, when did I really truly become an alcoholic? I have absolutely no idea. And it was a process. It was a process from, at one point as a teenager, like, hey, I got a bunch of friends. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. Making some memories, man. Making some new friends, whatever. It was like a social gathering thing, to, like, I can't have one. Like, I would go to parties, and people would go to, I remember I'd go with Amber to this one party we went to. Her best friend Shauna had it at their house. And people would come with like a 6-pack. I came with a fucking 5th of Hornitos and drank that thing the whole time, and just drank off the bottle. Like, that was me, man. That's what I did, and I was cool with it. Getting sober was really difficult, man, and it took everything. Like, I had to want it. And there's times that you don't want it, but as long as you kind of stick to the program and just stick to the plan, it does work. And it's different for everybody. You know, I think back of like, what would have happened if I would have gotten sober sooner? What would have but you can't, because hindsight's always 20/20. I got sober when I got sober, and that was the only time I would have gotten sober. And who knows, maybe if my dad didn't take his life, maybe I wouldn't be sober. Maybe I would still be using. Maybe I wouldn't be doing a podcast right now, and I wouldn't be where I'm at in life right now. I don't know. And so that's the thing, is like, you can't beat yourself up over what you did. As addicts, we have really bad pasts. We've done a lot of things to hurt people. We've done a lot of lies. And some of these lies, yeah, maybe they didn't hurt a whole lot of people. And some of these lies, they hurt a lot of people. And you kind of have to live with it. And you live with the fact that we can change. And that's the one thing I will say that addiction has taught me, is that we can change. And you don't change overnight. It's not this instant change, and it's not like this. It's just like how we became an addict. You all of a sudden just kind of look back after a year, and you're like, wow, my life is a lot better. It's not like, oh, this one day I've been sober for, 138 days, and my life instantly today is now better in all aspects. You look back a year later, and you're like, wow, my life is better. You look back 2 years later, and wow, it's gotten a little bit better. And it's just this progress back in. And then it's amazing, because that compound gets so much better to also, now I have an amazing life, and it's like, each year is amazingly better. Like, holy cow, like, I can't wait to see what next year brings. I have an app that I'm going to be releasing. I have like all this stuff that I want to do. And, My wife and I, we bought a house this year. We have now this office space and like so much. So I'm just so excited about what the future will bring. And it's the same as like sobriety is the same as addiction, man. You don't have a date that you just look back at and you're like, oh, on this day it changed. It's a process, man, and it's so different for everybody. And that's why I think it's so important to share. I think it's so important to share. I think it's important to have podcasts out there. I think it's important to have stuff out there where people can listen to this and realize like what you're going through is normal, man. What you're going through is hard. What you're going through sucks. What you're going through will get better, and that's what it's about. I'm filled with hope instead of a life that was all about when can I get a bottle. That's the amazing thing. It's like my life is filled with like, hey, I'm building an app right now, and this app is going to change how people look at trauma and grief and help people. And I'm getting with my accountant tomorrow to get my S corp all set up, and like I'm doing this like amazing stuff versus before my life was so much more simplistic of, well, I need to make sure I get a bottle, or oh my goodness, I'm shaking, I need to get some alcohol in me. And I wouldn't trade this for the world. And that's, I think, what really keeps me sober. When people are like, oh, do you have cravings and stuff? Like, I have a life that I have always dreamed of, that I've always wanted. And I've sacrificed so much to get here that I wouldn't risk it. Like, I don't know if I picked up a bottle and if I drank a shot or if I drank a beer, if I would relapse and I would go on a bender. I don't know. My assumption is that I would. But my biggest decision out of all of it is that I'm not going to, because I will never risk what I have. My wife is too important. My family is too important. My life is too important. And that really cuts out a lot of the cravings. When you've built this life that you treasure more than addiction, you're doing it right. And it took me 7 years to get here. And that's the thing. Like 5 years into my sobriety, I was not here. I hated sobriety for first 5 years. I made a bunch of decisions, and yes, there were these little decisions that each one was a little bit better. Like I look at 2020 versus 2017, it was better. I look 2021 versus 2017, it was better, even versus 2020. So yes, it constantly was getting better, but man, at year 5, finally when I truly got into trauma therapy and started really addressing like childhood trauma and grief and what I'd been through, like then my life truly started changing. And that's why I think it's so important that, yes, if you're going to AA, make sure you also get into the therapy. EMDR therapy is great. CBT, DBT, talk therapy. Find a therapist that you really like. See a therapist. Trust me, it changes everything with you. And, start working on yourself and start healing, because I think that's what it's about. And what really made the biggest difference to me was having that and having that change and having... like then all of a sudden I was more happy and could talk to my wife even about things I was struggling with, and parts of my life started to make more sense. And I really got rid of a lot of that victim mentality, because the hardest thing is you get sober and it's not just that addiction that you're breaking to substances, it's the addiction to the lifestyle and to the manipulation and to the victim and to how our mindset is. We've retrained our brain. We have to untrain it. It's not even that we're addicted. It's almost like we don't know any better. Like that's what we've become accustomed to of how life is. And as a sober person, it is very different than being an addict. Trust me, I've learned that the hard way. But man, it is so much. It's so worth it. It's so amazing. And that's why I'm so glad to get back to doing these podcasts. I'm glad to get back to doing a lot of content and kind of take my stuff to the next level of really helping people and creating something amazing that I've always dreamed of, to change how people go through life and how we struggle of not feeling alone. Because that was ultimately what I always wanted to do, is people not to feel alone. So for the one out there, know that you're worth it.